Hello computer cooks, your friend in retro, Perifractic here. Seriously, welcome back to my regular viewers and any new viewers as well. But wait, if ASMR recipes aren't really your cup of tea, I understand, but before you unsubscribe, block and report me. Stay tuned a moment whilst I spill the beans on what this recipode really is, but without any more tea bean or food puns. Now, in a nutshell, when I first released my video showcasing the incredible extreme restoration of an Atari 800 XL that had been donated in appalling condition to talented friend of the channel Pete, aka Drygol, I received a lot of comments, and I mean a lot, asking me to do ASMR retrocomputing videos like that, and going as far as to ask me to re-release that video simply with the music removed. And so that's what this video is, along with some new footage and enhanced audio from my newer equipment. Seriously though, I hope you'll understand that, along with the support of my wonderful patrons and PayPal donors, bringing in more viewers is essential to ensure that our small retro channel here survives and continues to grow, which in turn only helps existing fans too, even if you're not a fan of ASMR. AKA me talking normally, but without music. Either way, feel free to just stick around and bathe in the warm glow of nostalgia as we watch the saving of another of these special machines from the kitchen bin. Welcome to Retro Recipes. Now, although the Commodore 64 was my first love, and the Apple IIe was the first computer my parents ever brought home, those of you who subscribed will know that the Atari 400 was the first computer I ever owned. But little did I know back then that it actually had a big sister, the Atari 800 XL. Actually a cost-reduced Atari 800 with worse compatibility and a fuzzier, dirtier picture. And speaking of dirty pictures, here's one for you. But on the bright side, the protective film is still on the badge. So the story behind this is that a user called TDC posted in a forum that he had this Atari 800 XL that was, quote, unrefurbishable. Great word. And so Pete responded, nothing's unrefurbishable. And so this Atari 800 was soon after gifted to Pete. And the challenge was accepted. Let's start with the case. How's it going, Atari? Hanging a bit to the left? Oh dear. Well, let's take a hot gun to that. That sounds painful. Actually quite a simple remedy. Just heat up the plastic until it becomes pliable, and then exert some pressure using that pin. Hey presto, nice and straight. But what about the cracks in the case? Well, a soldering iron is what you use, but no solder. Just run the soldering iron over the plastic to mold it back onto the other half. But we have bigger fish to fry. So it's time to give this a nice soapy bath. It's looking better, but the bath hasn't quite cured all of the broken slats. Dozens of them. What you're going to need are some metal pins. Dozens of them. Then you take a Bunsen burner, heat up the pin and drop it onto the plastic. And after a few seconds and a few more pins, they will melt down and sink into the plastic, forming part of it and strengthening it, ready for the next step. So here's how the back of the case should look, compared here with an Atari 130 XE. And really the best way to do this is to rebuild a cage representing each of those slats. And so that's what's happened here. It looks incredible, but it doesn't look like much yet. What we're going to need is some polyurethane and a mold. So here's the mold. It's just an aluminium corner piece from some furniture. And we get our professional polyester resin mix go in here. Pour that into the mold. And then we're going to need a good Atari 800 XL case. Here's a spare. Luckily that was lying around. You dip that in the polyurethane, and when it comes out 24 hours later, peel away the backing, leaving only the front. And there you have it, your Jello mold ready for the cage to slot into. See how nicely that fits in there? And so we tape that onto the top piece, place it back into the mold, get our polyester resin, and pour that in. So we've created a negative mold, and then a positive again. 24 hours later, pull it out, and it's not perfect. There's a few too many air bubbles, but that's going to be able to be sanded down, and maybe use some putty as well to smooth out the finish. But what about the bottom piece? Here's how it should look on our spare case. So what we'll do is close off those holes at the back of the spare case, make a different shaped mold suitable for the bottom piece, place it into the mold, and this time, just to see if we can get some less air bubbles, we're going to use a silicone mold. And 24 hours later, here's what comes out. A complete negative Atari 800 XL, a sort of an Atari minus 800. And then you guessed it, it's cage time again. Look how nicely that fits into the mold around all the pieces. And then it's just a question of using the polyester resin again. Kind of looks like candy. Do you want to eat that? Oh, I do like retro computers. Well, we do need to finish off those finishes. So we'll get some universal putty here, spread it on nicely. It's like cake batter over candy. And then once it's sanded down, here's what you're left with. Good enough to eat. But there's one problem. The original has this texturized finish. So what we do is pour some of that polyester resin in a nice blob on top of that texture. You can also use a Atari disk drive or anything with that texture. It doesn't matter about the color. And when you peel it off, you get a texturized mold. Place that over where you want to texturize. Pour in some more polyester resin, and it should take the shape of that texture. We'll come back to that for a big reveal soon. But what about this motherboard? Looks okay on the surface, but when you look closer, we've got corrosion here on the CPU. Dust. Snapped resistors and capacitors. Even cracks in the board itself. And because the board is actually bent, what we're going to do is put this clamp on it and leave it at about 40 degrees centigrade for a few days to straighten out. We'll take out all the chips and put them in the RetroRecipe's deep fat fryer. Oh wait, no, sorry. It's an ultrasonic cleaner. And here we go. After a nice cleanup, things are looking a bit better. And our new chips combined with some of our bathed ones. And once we put them all into place and solder everything in, well, this is looking like the machine it once used to be. And down there lives the happy ROM chip, and we're going to give him a few new friendly capacitors as buddies. So let's plug it in and turn it on. It works. But even if it hadn't, don't worry, because Mark Watson's designed this FPGA-based replacement Atari board. It runs all the old cartridges, new equipment like SD cards, and does much more besides. And you can have this kind of PCB designed and built by PCB Way. They offer a full assembly service, so they'll put everything together if you're not as handy as Pete. Speaking of which, there's still a few things we could fix up though. There's this bent piece of the board here which just needs solidifying a bit. It's become very weak. So we'll get a really tiny drill bit, and then into that hole we can pipe some filler to solidify this job. Well, what about the keyboard surround? You know, this glass or perspex plate has really seen better days, but nothing a good polishing won't restore. And when the job's done, it's not perfect, but that is more than good enough. Wow. But those scratches really need something else, so a matching spray paint is used. It really does match the original color there. And once it dries, you can't really tell the difference between the two halves. Look at that. So we'll finish the job and glue back on those metal plates. That's how it was, and this is how it is now. What a beautiful job. So let's take a mallet, or a hammer, and panel beat the heck out of it. And finish off with a nice new zinc spray coating. Screw it all back in. And move on to the most daunting task here. Oh, this keyboard. Man. You know, we're going to need some new keys. And luckily we do have a spare keyboard. There's how it was, and there's how it's starting to look now. Cleaned up. Let's put on those spare keys. Look what an improvement this is. Brilliant. Well, let's come back to that case. Everything's had a chance to dry. And we've given it a coat of paint. Can you believe that was the same case as the beginning of this video? But to get that texturized finish all over, we're going to spray some more paint. And while it's wet, place our texturized mold on top of it. Push down firmly and peel it off. That's what you're left with. And you can repeat that process all around. Only one thing left. Motherboard goes into its new old home. And there's our top case with the keyboard in place. One final thing, the cartridge slot. And finally, the big reveal. Let's take a tour along with some of those glamour shots. Amazing to think that this is mostly molded and didn't exist. Which means we've got a message for the original owner of this, quote, unrefurbishable Atari 800. I'll drink to that. But when I first shared this restoration, I asked who wanted to peel off the protective film that was still in place, and I received 7 million comments urging us to do so. Well, the machine's back with original owner TDC in Poland now, but it's been a while since our Newfoundland retro recipe road trip back in July 2018, so let's travel now to Global Game Jam in Warsaw, almost live and filmed exclusively for retro recipes, as we peel the film and film the peeling. comment below if you want us to peel off the rest of the film. Don't worry, we got it all off. Speaking of which, I must be off. What did you think of this extreme furb? Please like and subscribe, comment below, and cheerio.